Driving. It's part of your job. You do it every day. Maybe you've never had an accident or a ticket. What could go wrong? Plenty. This year, approximately 30,000 people will die in vehicle collisions. That's 100 today. That's 100 tomorrow and the next day. Every day. People's lives are shattered. Families are torn apart. Why? Poor choices. But your odds of a fatal collision are still pretty slim. But even a minor fender bender or a traffic ticket can add points to your driving record. Can you afford it? Can your company afford it? Either way, it's not worth it. The good news is, most traffic collisions and citations can be avoided. How? Easy. Making good choices behind the wheel. You can do that, right? Of course you can. It's part of your job and a condition of your employment. There's no way we can cover every driving situation in this short program, but we will touch on a few common situations you will face and the choices you must make. We mention choices because that's really what it comes down to. Will you choose to obey traffic laws and operate your vehicle safely, or will you choose to take a chance that can have grave and long-lasting effects? You decide. One of the choices you can make is to minimize distractions while driving. We realize that in our modern world there are many distractions that cannot be avoided, but there are many that can. Statistics show that 80% of all crashes and 65% of near crashes involve some type of distraction. Nearly 6,000 people die annually in crashes involving a distracted or inattentive driver, and more than 500,000 are injured. The choices you make may keep you from becoming a statistic.
Everyone knows using a cell phone while driving takes your attention off the road. But even having a conversation using a hands-free accessory, such as a Bluetooth device, is just as distracting as holding the phone to your ear. It's not the physical act of holding a phone that is distracting. It's the conversation that really takes your attention away from the road. Whether using a handheld or hands-free device, it delays a driver's reactions as much as having a blood alcohol concentration of 0.8%. You wouldn't get behind the wheel when you were impaired from alcohol, so why would you choose to drive while distracted? Drivers who use cell phones are 4 times as likely to get into crashes serious enough to injure themselves or someone else. If you really need to make or take a call, make a choice. Pull over, park, and then handle your phone call. But talking on the phone isn't the only distraction. Distracted driving has become an epidemic. Everywhere you look, someone isn't paying attention. Can that be said about you?
Texting. Do we even need to go there? We already covered talking on the phone and driving, but texting is just as bad, if not worse. We've all seen it done, or perhaps done it ourselves. Texting takes your eyes off the road. That's a fact. The average time a person takes to input or read text is 4 seconds. In that time period, traveling at 60 miles per hour, you have traveled 352 feet. By choosing to text while you drive, you're choosing to put you and others in a deadly situation. Make the right choice. Never text and drive. Onboard computer systems, tablets, or laptops can also pose a significant risk to a driver's safety. If you think you can operate a computer while driving and still devote your attention to the road, you are sorely mistaken. How about using a tablet? That's easy, right? Wrong. Any type of electronic device requires your attention that should be focused on driving safely. Resist the temptation. Make safe choices. A map, a menu, a book, a magazine. All great things, but reading them in a moving vehicle, they are absolutely a disaster waiting to happen. I'm sure you've seen it done and thought, I can't believe that a person's doing that. Make sure you aren't that person. CDs, MP3 players, GPS, radios, air conditioning, heater. Great modern conveniences that make your ride more enjoyable. But they can be distractions that take your attention off the task at hand, driving, and compromise your safety and the safety of those who share the road with you. You may be very familiar with the controls on your radio or CD player, but it's a good idea to set these items as well as other devices like climate control knobs and mirrors prior to beginning your trip. Now you might be saying, it only takes a second or two to adjust my radio. But think of it this way. In the 2 seconds spent changing the station on the radio, your vehicle traveled 132 feet. A lot can happen in 132 feet. That's 12 car lanes, or a half a football field. It's the same thing as closing your eyes for a full 2 seconds while driving. Would you close your eyes while driving? I didn't think so. That second or two can be the difference between life and death. You decide. What about eating behind the wheel? It may seem harmless since it doesn't require deep thought, but consider that scalding coffee or other liquid spilled on your shirt or lap could lead to losing control of your vehicle. Eating with one hand or both and driving makes for an impressive juggling act, but reduces your control of steering, especially if you have to make a defensive driving maneuver. Remember, when in your vehicle, driving is your job. You can save yourself a lot of unneeded stress and worry by pre-planning your route thoroughly prior to your trip. Pre-planning will alleviate most distractions associated with navigation. But no matter how much we prepare or how well we think we know the area, we may still get lost, and trying to find your way can be very distracting. If you're lost, don't try to figure it out on the road. Pull over and find the correct route before continuing. Being lost is bad enough. Being lost and then being in a collision is even worse. But you have a GPS so you won't get lost, right? Probably so. A GPS is a great tool that allows us to navigate and keep our eyes on the road. But make sure you program your GPS before you start traveling, because trying to input or change information in your GPS while driving is definitely a distraction. If your GPS has a speech recognition system, be sure to activate this feature. So we've talked about all the potential distractions inside your vehicle, but what about the potential distractions outside your vehicle? You cannot control what goes on outside your vehicle, but you can be aware, anticipate hazards, and make choices to keep you safe. Pedestrians. Not only do they seemingly appear out of nowhere at times, they're often unpredictable. They may be distracted. Remember, just because you can see them doesn't mean they can see you. That's why you need to be aware of areas pedestrians may be and be prepared. Areas such as parking lots, shopping complexes, schools, or business parks are common areas. But even in areas outside of where you expect them, always yield to pedestrians. When driving in areas with high pedestrian traffic, keep your eyes moving. Survey your surroundings every 2 to 3 seconds. Be aware and expect the unexpected. But pedestrians aren't the only hazard. Bicyclists can be equally hard to see and are traveling at a faster rate than a pedestrian, and they are more often than not in traffic lanes. Be prepared. By reducing distractions, you are better able to focus on the hazards outside your vehicle that you can't control. Inclement weather isn't usually a distraction in and of itself, but the situations that arise from poor road conditions and the actions and reactions from other drivers can be distracting. Rain or fog makes it harder to spot other vehicle, pedestrians, and changes in road conditions. Driving when the road is wet presents special challenges: reduced traction, longer braking distances, and less control. This is even more of a challenge when the road is covered with oils, mud, fallen leaves, or other accumulated debris that become very slick with the first rainfall after a dry spell. Add to this mix thick fog that can dramatically reduce your visibility, and you're faced with dangerous conditions. In foggy conditions, since your sight zone is smaller due to reduced visibility, you need to drive slower to increase your reaction time and distance needed to avoid a potential hazard. Another basic tip for dealing with fog is using your low beam headlights. High beam headlight settings will usually produce glare that simply lights up the fog and doesn't increase the distance you can see ahead of your vehicle. Finally, remember that there may be drivers coming behind you. Make sure they can spot your vehicle by using appropriate flashers or warning lights. In any type of inclement weather, slow down and focus all of your attention on the road and other vehicles around you. Signs and billboards are designed for one purpose: to get us to read them. But whether or not you do read them is your choice. Even a simple billboard can divert your eyes from the road for a number of seconds. Again, taking your eyes off the road for even a moment can and will put you at risk. Remember, when you're behind the wheel, your job is driving. Not talking, not reading, not texting. Driving. Drowsy driving. Who hasn't experienced this? Our lives are busy, time is short, and we spend a great deal of it in our vehicles, rushing from one place to another. Many of us have jobs requiring long hours behind the wheel, from truck drivers to salespeople, not to mention long commutes to and from work. Added to these are the miles logged taking care of families and personal business, filling up evenings and weekends. Even with the best of intentions, most of us have found ourselves in this sleepy predicament. Make no mistake, this is more than just an annoying inconvenience. Drowsy driving is responsible for 1 in 6 deadly crashes, 1 in 8 resulting in hospitalization, and 1 in 14 in which a vehicle is towed. Several drowsy driving incidents have resulted in jail sentences for the driver, and multi-million-dollar settlements have been awarded to families of crash victims as a result of lawsuits filed against individuals as well as businesses whose employees were involved in crashes caused by drowsy driving. This is a dangerous and costly state of affairs that we need to pay attention to. Clearly, drowsiness plays no favorites, and no one is immune. But there are some very clear warning signs which shouldn't be ignored. If you're experiencing any of these while driving a car, you must consider that it's time to stop driving and find a safe place to pull over and address your condition. Here are some of the most common warning signs: difficulty focusing, frequent blinking, and/or heavy eyelids; difficulty keeping daydreams at bay; trouble keeping your head up; drifting from your lane, swerving, tailgating, and/or hitting rumble strips; inability to clearly remember the last few miles driven; missing exits or traffic signs; yawning repeatedly; feeling restless, irritable, or aggressive. Sleepiness impacts your driving skills by causing slower reaction times, vision impairment, and lapses in judgment, seriously limiting your ability to process information and make decisions. You can avoid drowsy driving by getting a good night's sleep before hitting the road. Usually, 7 to 9 hours is adequate for the average person. Try to avoid driving long distances alone. Having company can accomplish 2 things. You can share driving duties, And your fellow traveler can help you identify warning signs of fatigue, which you might not notice. Take a break at least every 100 miles or every 2 hours. Do something to refresh yourself. A snack, a brisk walk, or some simple exercises work really well. Avoid alcohol and medications that cause drowsiness. Of course, you cannot be under the influence of alcohol or drugs when you drive. That goes without saying. But many people forget many prescribed medications can have the same effect. This can be very dangerous. Drowsy driving, while it may not get the same amount of attention as other driving hazards, can be just as dangerous, and it can be prevented by making a choice. Don't drive when drowsy. We know you know how to drive safe, but do you? I mean, I know the speed limit is 65, but if I go 100 anyways, what does that knowledge get me? When you get right down to it, it's not really a matter of knowledge at all, but a matter of choices. Knowing traffic laws isn't enough. You need to choose to follow them for your own good and the good of those around you. The first thing you can do to prevent an accident while on the road is a proper pre-trip inspection. Prior to getting in the vehicle, take a look around the vehicle. Note any damage to the vehicle or fluid leaks. One of the most critical parts of the inspection is the inflation, tread depth, and general condition of the tires. Tread depth can be easily measured by observing tread wear bars or using a penny to measure the remaining tread. If a part of Lincoln's head is covered, there is the minimum 230 seconds remaining. But remember, that's the bare minimum. Steer tires must have 430 seconds tread remaining. When starting the vehicle, note warning lights and gauges. Check and adjust mirrors and headrest prior to moving the vehicle. Make sure the windows are completely clear of snow, ice, and fog before starting to drive. Now, what is the first thing you should do before putting your vehicle in drive? That's right, always wear your seatbelt. Wearing a seatbelt is the single most important thing you can do to protect yourself in the event of a crash. Next, obey all posted speed limits at all times. If the sign says 55, how fast should you be traveling? Obvious, right? Not necessarily. In inclement weather, such as rain, snow, or fog, the posted speed limit may not be safe. Slow down in inclement weather, and when the sun's out, do the speed limit. It may take your vehicle longer to stop than you may think. For this reason, we recommend a minimum of a 3-second following distance in dry conditions. To determine this distance, watch the rear bumper of the vehicle just ahead as it passes a stationary marker, such as a signpost or telephone pole, and count 1001, 1002, 1003. As you say 3, your front bumper should reach that marker. If you reach it before that point, reduce your speed by a few miles per hour and recheck your distance. Increase the following distance 1 second for each of the following conditions: adverse weather conditions, heavy traffic, following a truck, night driving or poor visibility, being tailgated, driving while stressed or fatigued. Plain and simple, leave more cushion and slow down. You can choose to follow at a safe distance, or you can choose to tailgate. What choice will you make? Remember, your vehicle has areas called blind spots. You cannot see without properly adjusted mirrors. Adjust your mirrors before you start your car and be aware of your blind spot at all times. You should keep your eyes moving and scan your mirrors approximately every 5 to 10 seconds to keep a constantly updated picture of what's going on around you. Intersections are responsible for over 50% of all accidents. When approaching intersections, scan to the left, then to the right, and back to the left for vehicles that may run a stop sign or light, or for pedestrians and bicyclists. Remember, always leave yourself an out. Anticipate what mistakes others may make and assume that they will make them. If there is a stop sign, make sure you come to a complete stop and let other vehicles with the right-of-way proceed. At four-way intersections, the vehicle on the right has the right-of-way, but never force the issue. If the intersection is lighted, be aware of stale green lights. This means if the light has been green for some time, be ready for it to change to yellow and adjust your speed accordingly. When stopping at an intersection, stop so you can see the rear tires of the vehicle in front of you. This will allow extra space in front of you in case the vehicle behind you bumps into you. Also, if the vehicle in front stalls, you will have room to maneuver around the vehicle. Avoid aggressive driving, speeding, tailgating, failure to signal a lane change, trying to beat yellow lights, running red lights and stop signs, weaving in traffic, yelling, making obscene gestures, excessive use of the horn. Each of these are hazardous and can result in accidents and injuries. When behind a slow driver, do not tailgate, especially at electronic gates. Wait your turn. If you need to pass someone, do so only when safe and legal to do so. Before changing lanes, check mirrors and lean forward to check blind spots before moving into the adjacent lane. If the vehicle is swerving, it may mean they are distracted, fatigued, lost, or under the influence. Be extra careful. Be ready for someone to change lanes or stop unexpectedly. By anticipating hazards, you will increase your safety and the safety of your passengers. In the same way, you need to make sure you don't create the same hazards. Always signal before changing lanes and avoid abrupt braking. You need to check mirrors and lean forward to check blind spots before changing lanes. By planning ahead, you're making the road safer for you and the other vehicles around you. You can avoid unnecessary backing by pulling through a parking space so you do not have to back out. If you must back, it is better to back in when you approach your destination instead of backing out when leaving. But if you must back up before getting into the vehicle, walk around the vehicle to make sure there is nothing in the way before backing. Back slowly and carefully. Again, have we covered every situation you may come across on the road? Of course not. But now you know how many common situations affect your safety. But knowing is not enough. You need to put this knowledge to work. You have a choice to make. It may be the difference between this and this. Make the right choice.